I live in northern Utah, but attended college in southern Utah. I had a favorite sports spot to hunt rabbits out in the desert. There's caves all over the mountains in this area, and we had heard that the Native American women and children would hide in those caves from the U.S. cavalry to avoid being raped and murdered. Anyway, one day while hunting, we headed towards the base of the mountain to collect one of the rabbits, and we heard an unearthly low growl. It wasn't something natural, like a mountain lion or a bear. It was very deep and gave us both goosebumps. We both looked at each other and left the area. Before any of this ever happened, we had noticed a black donkey around the area. This area is miles away from anyone, and the donkey just roamed freely. We joked around and called it the devil monkey, but I'm starting to question if it was a possible skinwalker. It was there every day, just wandering around the desert, didn't make a sound, and sometimes we would catch it just staring blankly at us. Most of the time when returning home at night, we would see these black silhouettes around the mountains that looked like people, but they would always be gone by the time we got to them. Thoughts? Were we just being paranoid? My girlfriend and I were driving from Bremerton, Washington to Shelton, Washington for a New Year's party at my friend's house. Now, I'm not sure if anyone is familiar with this highway, but it's a curvy road with only one lane on either side. It was around 11 o'clock at night, so it was pretty dark out. When we were almost to Shelton, we came around a curve to find something standing directly in the middle of our side of the road. Luckily, there weren't any other cars in the other lane, because I would have either hit them, or whatever was standing in the road, because I had to swerve all the way into the other lane to avoid it. After we barely missed this thing, neither me or my girlfriend could figure out what the fuck was standing in the road. This thing looked gnarly, almost like it was snarling. It kind of resembled a bear, but it was also way too tall to be a bear. I guess you could say it had the legs of a deer, and the upper body was a bear. I don't know if skinwalkers are in this area, but whatever it was, it did not look familiar or friendly. I've seen plenty of deer and bear to know that it wasn't either of those things. My girlfriend and I both just refer to it as the demon bear that almost didn't let us make it into 2020. Can anybody help me figure out what the hell we saw? I was just outside. It's 11:30, and I was having a cigarette. It's a small town, no traffic, no noise. But then I sense something, and out of the corner of my eye, see something walking down the street on all fours. So I look up, and it's gone. At first, I brushed it off, and then I got that feeling, the what if, especially with always being in this sub. So I get the chills and immediately put my cigarette out. I rush inside and close the door and go to the kitchen. So I look out the window, and I don't know if anyone will believe me, but there was a whole pale outline of something across the street behind the trash can watching me. And it's a trash can on a desolate street. No clutter, nothing. And we locked eyes, and I immediately started getting the chills again. So I started walking away through the hallway, and I took a peek out the hallway window, and the thing was next to my truck. I ran to my room, took 3 shots of whiskey, and now don't want to leave the room for the rest of my life. It wasn't a dog or a raccoon, or a possum. This thing looked like a heroin addict or chupacabra. I live in southern Utah. There's a lot of natives who live in my town, and many stories or beliefs of these creatures. Around an old mining location, there is stories of skinwalkers. One encounter, my friend was coming back from a party. They started up the car and saw a coyote coming for them. They locked the doors and began driving away. In the rearview mirror, they said they saw something running towards the car on 2 legs. It didn't seem like a human, and was keeping up with the car pretty well, even at 55 miles an hour. Most kids who have attended bonfires out there have very similar stories. Just wanted to ask if anyone has heard of skinwalkers chasing their cars. In some cases, the cars couldn't even start at all. Most natives won't go towards this old mining location or other places in my town. First, I feel as though I have to give you readers some background information about myself. I was raised by my mother, who was 50% Cherokee and 50% French. Us kids have never met our biological grandpa, and believes in paranormal things but tries to pretend that it's not there. And by my father, who is Scottish and English and German and Jewish by blood. He, on the other hand, is a 100% atheist and is rather skeptical about things he cannot explain. He endeavors to be a logical and scientific person in all things. Well, due to major differences in personalities, beliefs, and values, they divorced when I was 8. She soon married my stepfather, who is a devout Southern Baptist from Mississippi, and basically gave up her identity as a native and became a God-fearing woman. Despite issues with my mother, my dad continued to let us visit with her mom and stepdad because he felt they were good people. They taught us many things about native culture, spirituality, legends, and the people. My grandmother and I spent a lot of time together, so I was given an opportunity to learn her medicine. My grandma comes from a long line of medicine men and women, and one is herself. Now, so many years later, at the ripe old age of 23, I am one myself. So now you have some insight, and I'll continue. This isn't a ghost story, but I do believe it qualifies as paranormal, as it is outside usual daily happenings. About 2 years ago, my father, brother, and I moved into a new home, a little more in the country than our previous homes had been. Something we all thoroughly enjoyed because we grew up immersed in nature and a love for the land. Shortly after moving there, about 3 months in, I decided it was time to expand my family by getting myself a puppy. This would be the first dog that would actually be in my care. I've always had a very strong connection to dogs as my guiding spirit is a wolf. I learned this after a vision quest many years ago, but that's a story for another time. After a while of searching, I came across a beautiful 5-month-old male German Shepherd Pit Bull mix. I went to meet him and instantly fell in love. He was the greatest, very sweet, kind to the cats, and protective of me. He became my best friend, everything you could want in a dog. Now, anyone who has owned a puppy or young dog will know, potty training is a task. Even after being with us 2 months, he was still waking me up every 2 to 4 hours to go outside. Hard on the heart rhythm, but had to be done. On this occasion, in particular, we got a late-night visitor that we weren't expecting. Like I said, my dog woke me up in the night. This time it was around 2:45 in the morning, and I wasn't ready, but I dragged myself out of bed and clicked on the leash. Opening the back door greeted me with a cool breeze. I rolled my eyes and went out into the yard with my pooch. He did the usual dog thing, sniffed around and jumped in the freshly cut grass, completely forgetting what we'd come outside to do in the first place. I whistled at him, recaptured his attention, and he got back to business. As he squatted, I turned my head to the sky, offering him some privacy. The moon was exceptionally large that night, almost full but not quite bright. During this observation, I began to realize there was no typical nighttime noise around me. As if that wasn't unusual enough, I had a shiver go down my spine, and my arm hair began to stand on end. That's when I heard my dog let out a low growl as he pinned himself against my legs. When I looked down, his tail was tucked and hackles were raised. When I tried to move and he pressed himself against me more, another shiver came over me, and now I took the opportunity to follow where his eyes were looking. When I did, I was looking at what appeared to be a coyote. Not totally uncommon in the area. We'd heard them on many nights living here. But this was different, looked different, and felt different. The most frightening thing, however, was that it was looking right back at me. I didn't move, didn't take my eyes off it. That's how I was able to see its features so clearly in the moonlight. Its fur looked thin, even bald in some spots, Its eyes were yellow, not reflective yellow like you'd see on a dog in the dark, but yellow like the sun. Very powerful and almost blinding. Then, looking more closely, I noticed its back legs were longer than a normal coyote. Longer than any canine creature should be, actually. Starting at the hips and going down, they seemed to look almost bipedal in design. That's when it dawned on me just what I was saying. I picked up my 60-pound dog, never taking my eyes off this creature. As I did, I said a Cherokee prayer in my head that I'd learned from my grandmother. As if it was physically upset, it backed up slightly, and then I heard a voice that perfectly mimicked my grandmother say, "Why would you do that, Mikers?" No one aside from my grandparents ever called me that. It was their special name for me. With that, I darted for the door, dog still in my arms, entered, put him down and locked it behind me. The noise must have woken my brother because he came into the kitchen all bothered, asked me what was going on and why the dog was all riled up. I held my finger to my mouth and shut off the light. We then made our way into the living room and shut that light off as well. And like something out of a horror movie, the outline of a tall humanoid thing shone through the stained glass of the small window on the door, thanks to the bright moonlight. We both froze, and he made a grab for the knob when it started to turn. Capturing it just in time to lock it, that's when it spoke to him, but this time in my grandfather's voice. "Bubba, why don't you let Grandpa in?" His face turned ghost white, and he turned to me. That's when I mouthed the word, and he paled even more. It began to tap on the glass, and we both went into my room and ignored the knocking. The next night, around the same time, the tapping only grew louder. We sat in the living room praying to a Cherokee sun goddess that it would go away. The tapping turned into knocks, which turned into pounding the more we prayed. This must have woken my father because he came downstairs in a huff. We told him about the night prior during the day, but he didn't believe us and thought it was just one of my brother's friends being an asshole. So, when he saw the silhouette in the window, he grew more angry and made a beeline for the door. We yelled at him to not open it, but he did. However, instead of harming him, it seemed to be afraid because it got down on 4 legs again and disappeared down the road. My dad's face paled as he stumbled back a few steps. He locked the door behind him, and we all went to bed. The next day we talked about the situation. I explained to him the natives call this creature a skinwalker. They aren't very common in my native legend. They're more of a Western native legend, but my grandparents still taught us about them. Dad, being the skeptic, just summed it up to a weird thing he couldn't explain. Later that day, I went to our local craft store and bought juniper ash as my grandma instructed and sprinkled it around our house. It never returned, but my dog was never the same after that night. It's as though the entire experience changed him. He went from a loving animal to mean and unpredictable. He started lashing out at anyone who wasn't female. We tried correcting it over the course of a year and a half, but nothing helped. He finally harmed my brother, causing him to bleed, and I was forced to find him a new home. Luckily, he is with a couple who are both female, and he seems much happier, but even to this day, I guarantee he won't go out at night. I didn't mention the name of the creature very many times because it's considered a bad omen in native culture to give those things any energy. If anyone is nervous after reading this, please feel free to message me, and I will happily walk you through a prayer. I don't know what I saw, but I want to share this story that keeps me wondering if I really saw what I saw. I know I saw it, but could be my mind playing tricks on me. So here's my story. I got a new puppy a few weeks ago, and during this time, the motion sensor light broke on the side of our house. At around 10 p.m., I was taking him out to pee, and it was super dark and silent. I was kind of freaked out by the silence, but could hear trees cracking in the wind and weird sounds coming from a tiny forest area behind our house. I felt super paranoid, so I grabbed my pup and went inside. 2 or 3 hours later, I had to take the pup out for his last pee of the night. I picked him, went outside and replaced him on the ground right outside the door. When I did that, I looked to the left and saw a smallish black figure run like a dog and then grow as if it were running like a human and went behind our above-ground pool. Scared as hell, I picked my pup up immediately and ran inside, locked the door and just stared at the door, waiting for something to come running up to the door. We have a 5-foot fence, but because my pup was only like 10 weeks old and could squeeze through the fence posts, so we had to zip tie construction barrier all around the fencing so nothing could get through. I thought that whatever it was that I saw, I wouldn't be able to escape. So I woke my dad up, grabbed a gun, and with his confidence, we checked the yard out and found nothing. Not telling my mom, the next morning, my mom takes the pup out at around 5:30 in the morning. I'm sleeping on the couch, and all I hear is my mom yell and run inside with the puppy because she saw a black figure run behind our pool. I still had my gun near me, so I grabbed it and went to see what was outside. I looked outside everywhere to make sure there wasn't an animal stuck on the inside of our fence, but found nothing. I told my mom about what I saw the night before and was just kind of in agreement that it was weird, but that was the end of that. So that's the end of the story, and now I'm kind of scared to be alone, in the dark at my house at night. It could be my mind playing tricks on me, but I swear I saw what I did. Alright, so before I start, I have previous experiences with shadow people and spirits. What I'm about to say is a bit different. I moved to my new house, which was built in 2009. There's no history with spiritual activity whatsoever. I have 2 younger siblings who claim to see a wolf in the house. My mother has also claimed to see me when I wasn't present in the house or the room said. At night, I hear my personal restroom go off, as in the shower head splashing everywhere and random water splashing. I also see random shadows running around and hear scratching on my bedroom door and living room couch. Today I played with a candle asking what entities live here, and the only one answer I got was a wolf. I did more research and it has led me to believe it is a skinwalker. When I lit the candle, I asked for signs that something was here, and I heard growling. Anyway, if anyone can help me more with the information on skinwalkers or what possesses my home, please reach out to me. This happened in northern Idaho, around the Canadian border. When my dad and I would go hunting, it was fairly standard practice for us to sleep under the stars in the bed of his pickup truck. I was about 8 or 9 at the time, and we had an unsuccessful day of hunting that Friday, and were going to stay the night at the site and then start back up early Saturday morning. Well, I was cozily sleeping in my bag when, around 2:30 in the morning, my dad and I both shot awake. There was some creature on the other side of the hill we were parked next to that made this sound I still haven't been able to find anywhere online. Loud as hell. It sounded like the cross of a screaming koala and a woman screaming out of primal rage. It yelled for approximately 30 seconds before silencing for about a minute. Then it screamed again. My father was at this point quickly shoving me and a few times from the back of the truck into the cabin, where he also entered and locked the door. We heard the yell one more time after we were safely locked inside the truck cabin, and I asked my dad, who, being an avid hunter and lived in northern Idaho his whole life, what was happening, and I remember him looking scared and simply saying he doesn't know. So yeah, I'm 22 now and have tried to find anything that makes that noise for years now, but have been unsuccessful. I think it's a skinwalker, so that's what I'm going with. Maybe you guys have had similar experiences. So, my brother was telling me about a skinwalker story that he encountered a while ago that went something like this. A gathering of people, or a caravan party. The narrator did not know everyone there. He notices that the number of people at the party begins to fluctuate and decrease throughout the night, and everyone else starts to notice too. Some of them go out to look for the missing people, and the narrator stays around the fire. Although the people left separately, they all return after some time all at once with the missing people. So the party begins to quiet down, and the people who were once talking are sitting and listening silently. The narrator becomes aware and decides to go to bed because it's a bit boring, and some others do too. Right as he is going to sleep, he looks out the caravan window to see that everybody left outside is sitting silently and motionless around the fire. He is woken up the next day by someone else apparently at the gathering, asking if he was okay. Apparently, everyone who left the camp was found unconscious in the fields in various locations, and their apparent replacements were nowhere to be found. This is how he told it to me. So, I've had strange experiences in Austin before, where I hear a strange, deep croaking sound, or my friends would feel something chasing them if they were in the woods. But I think it's finally starting to attack, and it's scaring the hell out of me. Every single way it moved and basically shapeshifted just screams Skinwalker to me. Basically, I went outside to smoke some weed as normal. I was on the second story of my house on the deck, which usually makes me feel pretty safe. But as I went on to the third bowl, I heard a light rustling of leaves that was like a raccoon that quickly morphed into an aggressive and erratic behavior. The rustling got louder, like it grew in size to that of a human. But even though it was humanoid, and even made a small groan that sounded like it was hungry, the way the sound of it moving could dart across my left to right ear, almost like it's moving faster than a cheetah, but almost more articulate and precise with its movements. I then started telling myself that I'm on the second floor, so it can't hurt me. But then what I feared would happen, happened. It quickly darted over to me from what I'm guessing was like 30 yards in just a few seconds. It then quickly scurried up the pillars of my deck. I don't know if skinwalkers can climb, but then pounced onto the wood with a disturbingly loud thud. I accepted death at this moment, as I was helpless and realized that this thing is so much stronger than me. But for some reason, it jumped off almost hesitant to kill me. It scurried around and then hurdled my fence with no efforts or grunts. It then darted around my entire backyard within seconds. I'm honestly really scared, and I don't know what to do. I want to go out tonight and look for it so I can videotape it. If I die, then the video will be on my phone, and then there will finally be proof that this evil exists.